I now declare this meeting to be reconvened, and I will ask Sandra to take the roll. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Goff will be, Mayor Goff will be late. Councillor Cashmore.
Present.
Councillor Bartley. IMSB member Ren Blair.
Kia ora.
Councillor Casey.
Morena, Sandra.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Kia ora, Sandra. Kia ora, Desley.
Councillor Combe.
Kia ora.
Councillor Cooper.
Kia ora tātou.
Councillor Dalton. Councillor Darby.
Kia ora tātou.
Councillor Filipina.
Whakarowhalai atu.
Councillor Fletcher.
Present.
Councillor Henderson.
Good morning.
Councillor Hills.
Kia ora koutou katoa, thank you.
Councillor Mulholland.
Good morning.
Councillor Newman.
Good morning.
Councillor Sayers.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Good morning.
Councillor Walker. Councillor Watson.
Bula Banaka.
IMSB Chair Taipari.
Ngā mihi.
Councillor Young.
Good morning, and Councillor Bartley is here as well.
And Councillor Walker's here.
Thank you, Councillor Young.
Thank you.
Councillor Dalton, are you with us yet?
I actually think Councillor Dalton may be attending the same meeting as Mayor Goff.
Oh, right. Okay. So I have apologies then for from the Mayor for lateness on council business, and I probably need to put Councillor Dalton as well. I'll move those apologies. Do I have a seconder?
Second, Mulholland.
Thank you, Councillor Mulholland. All those in favour say aye. Against?
Aye.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. I will call for any declarations of interest. Member Blair, I will ask for any declarations of interest. Right, okay, there are no declarations of interest. I will move to confirm the minutes. We have two sets of minutes, 19th of August open and confidential, and the 16th of September open and confidential. So I will move. Do I have a seconder, please, Deputy Chair?
Sure do, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. Thank you. I have received no petitions and no request for public input. We now go to item 6, which is local board input, and I invite Brent Catchpole, the chair of the Papakura Local Board, to address the meeting. Brent, are you there? Brent, we can't hear you. Sandra, is he on the call?
Can't actually see him. We'll follow that up immediately.
Right. While we're waiting, I have had a declaration of interest from Member Blair in the sidebar. He just had to pop up from the meeting for a minute. So can we please just note that declaration of interest from Member Blair? Thank you. Mr. Catchpole, are you there? What I will do then is I will leave that local board input and go straight to, and with no extraordinary items, I will go straight to agenda item 8, which is a presentation from Eden Park. Do we have Brett Winstanley, Nick Saunter and Vicky Salmon online?
Yes, we do.
Yep. Right. Thank you. I will just, however, hand over to John Bishop to introduce this item. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. Look, I won't spend a lot of time on the council cover paper. I'll take that as read and happy to take any questions at the conclusion of the presentation from Eden Park. The paper in general from Council gives an update on the loan, the grant to Eden Park, and the work being done with Auckland Unlimited on joint management and operation of the stadium. I'll now hand over to the Eden Park team. As usual, we have Brett Winstanley, the CFO, Nick Saltner, the CEO, and Vicky Salmon, who chairs the Finance and Audit Committee. So I'll pass over to the Eden Park team.
Thank you, John. Eden Park, over to you.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone and councillors, and acknowledge my fellow trustee, Renata Blair. Kia ora. And thank you for your invitation to the Finance and Performance meeting. I'm just waiting for Nick to hopefully upload our presentation. Alongside me, I have Nick and Brett, as mentioned, and we'll be presenting to you a financial overview we presented back in March of our year-end results. Obviously, we've had quite a number of events this year, so we've had a reasonable time up to about 2 months ago. But we'll give you a heads up on where we're at, where our loans are, how we're progressing with our grant and CapEx, an update on events and what's happening next year as well, because that has an effect on the city, and our commitments to environment and climate change, and an update on COVID. So I'm going to hand over to Nick. Hopefully, Nick, you can load up our presentation. Thank you. Nick, are you there?
Nick, can you hear us? Well, Brett, have you got a copy? Oh, here we go. No. Here we go. We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, good. So hopefully Nick, who's controlling the presentation, can go through that. Nick, you might need to take either the microphone off or something there we can't hear you yet.
Councillor Simpson, it's Sandra here. Nick actually isn't online and I've got the presentation for you. So is there somebody else from Eden Park who can
I'll just check.
Go through this for you?
I can do it with Brett. Just let me have a quick call to Nick, see what's happening.
I know he was having trouble hearing the presentation, but I thought at that point he must have been on the call. So I'm not sure what the extent of his technical difficulties are.
Are you able to get online, or you can't? Yes, they are. Yep. So Sandra's loaded up the presentation, so she can just push it through for us. So if you can come back online, or I can start, and when you're ready. Right. Thanks, Nick. So what I'll do is we'll start, because I think mainly the finances. Sandra, if you could go to the next page, that would be great. Nick's going to join us in a moment.
Kia ora, everybody. It's Brett Winstanley speaking. I'm the CFO of the Eden Park Trust. So this slide is a summary of our financial performance through the year. We have 4 columns there, being as a baseline the annual report from 2020, the 2021 budget numbers, the 10 months to August 21, and a forecast to the end of the financial year. I would just note that the numbers presented at the top do not include the council grants that we've received or the government COVID grants and subsidies. I've just eliminated those to present the information on a like basis, an even playing field, if you like. As a point of comparison, we had an operating profit before depreciation in our annual report last year of 1.859 million, and after depreciation a comprehensive loss of $7 million. We were budgeting to make a profit before depreciation of just over $1 million this year, $1.080 million. There was a lot of doubt about exactly what we would or wouldn't be able to deliver during the year. There was a lot of doubt about the certainty of our event schedule, and so forth. So we budgeted relatively conservatively accordingly. Moving to the third column, the 10 months performance to August, by this point in the year we had managed to complete almost our entire schedule of major events. The only major event that we lost towards the beginning of the year was one T20 cricket match between New Zealand and Australia, and we managed to deliver a full year of Super Rugby, albeit in the mixture of the Super Rugby Aotearoa and the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman format. And we had also been fortunate enough to deliver 2 Bledisloe Cup tests in August. That was a change to the test match program. We had at one point in time had a test match against Argentina and South Africa scheduled, but COVID restrictions prevented those events from happening. Another financial highlight of the year, of course, was the fact that we held the first concert at Eden Park in the month of April. So that has enabled us to achieve a profit before depreciation of $4.8 million for the 10 months to August. We still have a depreciation charge to add, and our comprehensive loss at that point in time was $3.187 million. That's not including the income that we will have to recognise for council grants and government COVID support. The final 2 months of the year, we will be in lockdown for the entirety. So we won't have delivered any further events. We won't have had any functions, any of our tourism assets operating. So our performance at the year end will look something like the numbers are forecast there: a profit before depreciation of just under $4 million, and after depreciation for the full year, a comprehensive loss of $5.7 million. Once again, I would add to that we will recognise the council grants as income and the COVID grants and subsidies as income, so they will improve the result. Thank you. Sandra, I think we can move to the next slide. This is a brief summary of the grant funding. 3 years of 3 years of balances there, totaling $9.8 million was the total of the development funding agreement. At the 30th of September, the balance that we have claimed is just under 5.5 million. And we're currently in discussions with FIFA regarding some non-compliance issues, especially stadium lights, which we may seek to include within the third year estimate of $4.14 million. Thank you. If Nick is available, I think he was going to speak to the next slide.
Thank you, Brett, and tēnā koutou katoa. Sandra, will you be operating the slides, please? Thank you very much. Now, firstly, I'd like to thank Auckland Council for their contribution towards these vital projects in relation to our operations. Over the last 12 months, we've implemented a number of venue improvements, including our IPTV, emergency evacuation messaging screens, our CCTV camera replacement to digital technology, recording and storage, our elevator refurbishment for both public and back-of-house lifts, essential electrical upgrades to redundant services to mitigate our risk of cyber attack, and obviously the purchase of turf equipment to maintain the council-funded field replacement. Thank you, Sandra. Brett touched on the fact that there is a number of non-compliant requirements for the FIFA Women's World Cup. We are targeting 7, potentially 8 fixtures for Auckland and Tamaki Makaurau. There is also a requirement for consenting given the window of opportunity for the FIFA Women's World Cup. So we are working with FIFA and also central government around funding opportunities for legacies relating to the 3 Women's World Cups. That includes both lighting and turnstiles. Thanks, Sandra. I'll just hand back to Brett in relation to the loan summary.
Thank you, Nick. So again, very briefly, the loan was established, the $54 million facility was established with an opening balance in September 2019 of $46.545 million. At our last financial year end, the loan balance had reduced to $46 million. And as at the 30th of September, and consistent with the council report, the balance stands at $44.25 million. That is the balance as it stands at today's date. One comment perhaps to add there is that over the course of the next 12 months, we would expect to be drawing down as we fund the cost of an acoustic barrier, which was a requirement of the resource consent approval for concerts.
And just to clarify, also for the Rugby World Cup. Thank you, Sandra.
Nick, is that the end? I've got a blank screen.
No, there's a number of additional slides. I'm not sure if, Sandra, are you having some technical problems?
Sorry, Sandra. Sandra O'Toole is actually running the presentation for us, and might just need to get Sandra to do something.
If I request control, I do have it on my PC.
Sure.
I was just going to reload it again. It looks like we've got a blank screen from what I've had loaded. So can you just give me a moment, Nick?
Okay.
Or just give Nick the ability to share screen. This is where I need sort of music playing, isn't it?
I think 660 would be appropriate.
Yes, let's go with that.
Very clever, very clever, very clever. Alf, I might need your music.
I can always sing, Chair.
I'm not sure whether that's probably the best idea.
I'm just trying to picture all the faces saying, nah, don't even go there with their head shaking.
Fortunately, my camera's off. How are we going, Sandra? Is it Nick doing it or are you doing it?
Right. I think the issue is that there's some very large pictures in here.
It's working now from my perspective. So, Nick, do you want to keep going? We've got the highlights, major events and cancellations slide.
Thank you, Desley. Just in relation to the financial performance, we have had strong member and corporate suite sales. We operate obviously under a very lean team. We have implemented a number of cost savings, and throughout the last 12 months, we've secured a number of new icon partners. Obviously, concert revenue was central to the performance over the last 12 months, and I do want to acknowledge the team for their efforts under very challenging, I suppose, conditions for the event sector. Some of the highlights over the last 12 months have seen Eden Park being named the #1 stadium in the world in the mid-year rankings with Polestar. We held the first ever women's Super Rugby fixture between the Blues and the Chiefs. As part of our ongoing relationship with the Muslim community, we've held the 2 Eid festivals over the last 12 months again. During the past 12 months, we've also employed 3 refugees through the Belong Aotearoa program. And obviously the Blues winning a Super Rugby title well overdue. And I know, Alfesso, you were excited by that news. In relation to our concerts, we've got a steady stream and a significant pipeline of content coming through, with the first concert being announced, Guns N' Roses, but also a number of pending announcements for the summer of 22 and 2023. In relation to some of our community initiatives, we did receive a commendation from the Police Commissioner in relation to Constable Matthew Hunt's funeral and the completion of the waterboard project at the park, saving 16 million litres a year. Major events, as touched on, we delivered within 6 weeks, on the 24th of April, the 660 concert, the first ever concert at Eden Park, and still the world record for a concert post-COVID, and something that I think the imagery went around the globe, and we'll touch on that further a bit later. We were fortunate enough to secure the 2 Bledisloe Cup fixtures for Auckland just prior to the lockdown, and we also held our Wellington Phoenix versus the Perth Glory fixture, a Black Caps versus Bangladesh T20, and in partnership with a local art gallery, implemented our first ever inaugural Art in the Park that saw over 14,000 visitors to the park and over 100 local artists being able to exhibit their work at Eden Park. Sadly, we did have a number of cancellations. That included the Pumas fixture, the Springboks, and the entire Farah Palmer Cup and Bunnings NPC matches for Auckland. Thank you, Sandra.
Sandra, can you turn the page, please? Thank you.
I just wanted to talk on the event economics in relation to our first concert. The concert delivered significant benefit for the local community and the country. And this slide demonstrates the yield per seat arising from Eden Park versus the other facilities in New Zealand. The comparison with Mount Smart Stadium relates to LAB, whereas the other comparisons relate to 660. In relation to the numbers, according to data obtained from Auckland Unlimited, utilising event economics, just under 16,000 visitor nights was delivered as a result of the first concert. Quite significant given that we had borders closed and only 6 weeks between that event being announced and then implemented. $5.6 million of benefit was delivered, net benefit for the city, and we had $3 million increase in regional GDP as a result of the fixture, the event. Thanks, Sandra. Just some of the headlines around the globe. We are very proud to have been able to showcase Aotearoa and Tamaki Makaurau. The first, as I mentioned, the biggest concert in the world post-COVID, and some of the headlines were the lead story in Al Jazeera. The New York Times ran us on the front page, and we had coverage in the Sun and the Telegraph. So some imagery that the team are very, very proud of, but also the ability of the team of 5 million to be able to respond to the COVID outbreak in the first instance. Thank you, Sandra. In relation to our upcoming event calendar, we're currently in discussions with Te Matatini. We're very excited about the opportunity to host Te Matatini at Eden Park. Obviously, it's been already postponed for 12 months, and in conversations currently around ensuring that that event is held in Tamaki Makaurau and at Eden Park, and working through some of the logistics in relation to any potential postponements due to obviously the current Delta outbreak, but also the ability for the Kapahaka teams to train. In consultation with Carl Ross, the CEO of Te Matatini, we are committed to ensure that this event is held at Eden Park. It is something that there's been many years in the planning, and ensuring that we can make sure that that event is delivered and seeing whānau safe at the National Stadium. In relation to the ICC Women's World Cup and the Rugby World Cup, both events are now on sale and pre-sales have been extremely strong. We're working with our hirers to ensure that they can safely get into the country, and then also with the government's support, see the gender appropriate upgrades of our bathrooms. I've touched on the FIFA Women's World Cup and Guns N' Roses. The next 3 years is going to be very, very exciting at the park, as the escapism that we know that events can deliver, and also the pipeline of content of people wanting to come and perform on our stage. Thank you, Sandra. In relation to our community engagement, I want to acknowledge the Albert Eden Local Board and their ongoing support of initiatives at Eden Park. There are a number of community, both local and regional activities that we implement. Just a couple of highlights has been the Upside Downs Partnership for young families with children with Down syndrome, and also the LifeMark Street to Seat audit that saw us then apply to a charitable trust to get $70,000 worth of grants to enable one of our staff who is a tetraplegic to have automatic doors installed at two of our major entries to make Eden Park the most accessible venue in New Zealand. We also sit on the Crowded Places Advisory Group. Obviously, counter-terrorism and security has been an ongoing concern in relation to the event sector, and to have a presence and be able to demonstrate some of the initiatives that we've been able to implement with Auckland Council support with the upgrading of CCTV has been the benchmark. There's a number of local school initiatives that we implement and community response to ensure that we are seen as both a strategic asset for New Zealand, but also a community asset for Auckland. In recent days, we announced our AA Insurance Big Little sponsorship, where over now 3,500 schools submit to receive $10,000 worth of sports equipment on both the South and North Island as a result of that partnership with AA Insurance. Thank you, Sandra. Eden Park has taken a leadership role in relation to vaccination. We have been previously used as a COVID testing centre and implemented an awareness campaign to ensure that events aren't a distant memory. We've encouraged our both casual and full-time staff to get a shot and be vaccinated, and are working with the DHB and Auckland Council around mass vaccination opportunities at the park. In recent weeks, we've engaged with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei to look at an initiative in the coming weeks to target particularly Māori in light of vaccination numbers in Māori and Pacific communities. Thank you, Sandra. With regard to Auckland Unlimited, one of the challenges that we face is the uncertainty with the events coming through, and whether it be through MIQ spots or borders. We are looking to streamline the funding relationship to secure major events with Auckland Unlimited, and this is an ongoing conversation from CEO down. Next slide, please, Sandra. In line with Auckland's climate plan, we're taking steps to reduce our carbon footprint. Part of this journey is WELL certification. This certification is to ensure the health and wellness in our buildings via a holistic approach to the build environment, assessing behaviour, operations and design. By way of background, we engage with JASMAX to look at the carbon footprint of Eden Park, but also future strategies to address some of the challenges that we face in relation to emissions and targets. By way of background, New Zealand must reach net zero carbon by 2050. Buildings have a long life cycle, so anything that's been built around now will be here till at least 2070. So new buildings will have to have half the embodied carbon by 2030 to meet the 2050 target. We must use and reuse existing buildings. To put it in a context, if a 60,000 seat national stadium is our baseline, the building of a new stadium would generate significant carbon emissions due to the extensive use of new concrete and steel. So the opportunity for us to reuse fit-for-purpose componentry of Eden Park is essential for us to meet our carbon goals, but also to avoid a climate catastrophe. Thank you, Sandra. To assist us on that journey, we're looking at a whole range of analysis and the impacts of climate change, including on event delivery. Using life cycle analysis, we're comparing a typical 60-year building life. Building and operating a new 60,000 seat stadium would emit around 325,000 tonnes of carbon emissions. Adapting or reusing an existing Eden Park would save around 137,000 tonnes of carbon. One of the other points that we've been working with the CRL and also the light rail project to ensure that Eden Park is well serviced by existing mass transportation services. This will obviously reduce carbon emissions significantly when moving fans to and from events. Leveraging the CRL financial and carbon investment through Kingsland Railway Station is an excellent outcome, and leveraging the value of these investments. Putting it in simple terms, if we were to continue to run Eden Park's operations over the next 100 years, we'd see that 137,000 tonne reduction, or the equivalent of removing 30,000 cars off the road a year. Thank you, Sandra. As I mentioned, we are looking to play our part. We are on a journey in relation to our sustainability initiatives. Spectator waste management has been a real focus over the last 3 years. The eliminating of single-use plastic at the park, ensuring that our promoters don't use single-use promotional products, and a number of initiatives including the sorting of waste post-event to ensure we're not diverting waste to landfill. Our bees that are on site, there's research and data capture on the movements in the area. We have our on-site garden that uses local business compost to then, in partnership with the Morningside Urban Market Garden, grow vegetables at Eden Park and then sell them to the likes of Crave in the community. Brett mentioned earlier about the conversion to LED lighting. That is a big project, not only from an environmental perspective, but also a compliance perspective that we're looking to implement across the entire stadium. Our water harvesting initiatives on the South Stand, but also the implementation of the bore, has seen that 16 million litres saved, and the implementation of compostable packaging across the stadium in our retail catering. In our last catch-up 6+ months ago, there was a comment in relation to our previous field and the selling of the surface. I did talk to the team following it, and there was a stat that I thought was worth reporting, that over 100 tonnes of landfill was diverted by selling that product to residents in the area. So again, it was a great story in terms of the sustainability initiative, but also ensuring that we are focused on the environment. Next slide, Sandra. So I'd just like to finally just acknowledge again the team at Eden Park. The stadium is built for the world stage. we're looking forward to making more moments and placing that ability to help New Zealand rebuild post-COVID. We know that there's significant challenges with mental health arising from the lockdowns. We know that events and the employment opportunities and economic benefits derived from events can really help kickstart the economy, but also Auckland into a post-COVID era. So thank you, Desley.
Oh, thank you very much, Nick and Vicky and Brett, for that outstanding presentation. I have a number of questions, so we'll go to those now for you. And if councillors would just like to ask who at the Eden Park team they would like to answer their question. First question for Eden Park comes from Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Hi, Nick. I've got a few questions. And I'm looking at the presentation that you've given, and I'm looking at the page on the summary of financial performance.
Yes.
I just wonder whether Sandra can put that up. So it's page 2.
It's right at the beginning, Sandra. It's not that one.
Second page in.
Yes, just give me a moment. It's a big document, so.
Look, I'll start the question anyway.
That's it.
Thank you.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would suggest that the financial performance is outstanding. What it shows to me is that Eden Park has traded profitably, obviously before depreciation, and you pointed out that you were the #1 stadium. I venture to say from a financial perspective that might well be the case, and I'd invite your comment on that. But what I'm interested in, what are the reasons for this financial performance, Nick?
Thank you, Wayne. And we do need to acknowledge our lean team. They do an outstanding job. We did implement a strategy of emerging stronger post-COVID, and we put ourselves in the best possible position once we were able to deliver events, and I publicly acknowledge the team of 5 million and our ability. We were the envy of the world, hosting sellout rugby fixtures or indeed concert content when most other economies and societies were locked down. This has seen a very strong membership response and also corporate suite response. We've also managed to secure a number of new partners over the last 12 months who've bought into our strategic plan and also our game plan around values and behaviours. We are a nimble organisation. We look to pivot. We implemented a number of events like Art in the Park. Very few venues in the world have had art shows displaying local artists, and that was just such a wonderful success to see artists that hadn't been able to exhibit coming to the park, and a lot of them sold out, and we're already locked in for next year. I've mentioned about our lean operations and cost-saving initiatives that we implemented. We also proactively contacted our hirers to ensure that content that was potentially in the pipeline, we wanted to have put up our hand and make sure they considered Eden Park. And we saw that with the second Bledisloe Cup being held in Auckland. If that fixture hadn't been secured for Auckland, we would have had some challenges in relation to our members and also corporate suites and Icon partners not being able to deliver on obligations. I do want to acknowledge members and our corporate partners. They have supported us throughout the lockdown period, and we have looked to do creative initiatives. We've got our Toro Turf Cam that people can watch grass grow. There's a whole range that is available on our website, but really trying to not only engage with the community through innovation, but also through our partners and deliver the financial results that we have. Our team as we mentioned previously, during the first lockdown, took a 20 to 80% pay cut. Our trustees for 3 months foregoed their trustee fees. So this has been a team effort to deliver the finances that we see today.
Thanks, Nick. The other question I've got just goes to the slide that's about 4 down, event economics. Could you pick that one up, Sandra? It's about 4 or 5 down.
Keep going, son. Oh, that's the one that's got a lot of what?
Apologies, Desley. I did have some technical problems earlier.
Oh, that's okay, Nick. No worries.
I'll start the question, Madam Chair, and it goes to benchmarking and comparisons, which is what this table is about. So I understand that you've got obviously gross receipts yield per seat, but having said that, if we're talking about benchmarking as it goes to comparing Eden Park with a number of the other venues, you've got corporate suites that aren't given away, and you've also got membership. So I'm assuming that this yield per seat is before the consideration of those items. So your actual yield, if you like, is actually more than just yield per seat. Would that be correct?
That's correct. There's a number of reasons why we see ourselves as the venue of choice for fans and promoters in Auckland, and that is the facilities, the accessibility, but also we do have the opportunity for up to 10,000 plated meals at events. So for premium content, and I know Desley at the last session I mentioned Barbara Streisand, so I'll use Barbara Streisand as the example. It does deliver an opportunity for a promoter to have up to 10,000 plated meals across the venue, and that economic benefit then flows through, whether it be in relation to supply chain. We use a number of local suppliers for our fruit and veg or our meat, the staff and the workforce. So there's a number of downstream effects that our corporate offering can then deliver for premium content. That's not to say that other venues in Auckland won't play a part in any future stadium strategy. And there we saw yesterday with Snoop Dogg being announced for the Trust Outer Oval. So I think it comes down to what's best for Auckland, but also venue of best fit. And in this instance, it demonstrates how strong the yield can be from the events delivered.
Okay, and the last question I've got, Madam Chair, just goes to the analysis that you've presented around climate change, and I understand that. My question is around I would suggest, very close relationship around reducing carbon emissions and the efficiency of capital investment as it goes to Eden Park compared to other stadiums. Yes, I understand what you've done as it goes to carbon, and yes, I understand that you're translating that in terms of dollar terms as it goes to investment. My question is around what sort of information have you got around the capital investment comparisons as it goes to other stadiums?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Walker. I don't have information in relation to CapEx spend across other facilities in New Zealand. We do have extensive discussions with facilities across the ditch, but also in the UK and the US to see where money is being allocated. The number one issue for any stadium or arguably any building is the CapEx plan and that investment over whether it be a 10 or in this instance a 70-year or 60-year life cycle.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. A second question from Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And firstly, Vicky, Brett and Nick, congratulations to you and the team on Eden Park being named #1 stadium in the world. I think that's certainly, a big ray of sunshine in what's, been a tough time for our city, and to have that sort of kudos recognised across the world, and at the same time being putting on the number of events you've been able to, by good grace amongst other things, is really a big positive and something that's uplifting, Auckland at a time when, we're under the pump a bit. So congratulations to all concerned there. That's outstanding. Just in terms of the report back to us and noting that some of the leading work that had been done with respect to climate change and a lot of events and promotions to do that are community-based. I just want to drill down on one of the rather small specifics, but I think an important one, and Nick, and you might be the best person to answer this, and it goes to the purchase of this turf equipment to maintain Eden Park surface, and that was a council-funded item. And I really just want to ask about the importance of that sort of investment, given that clearly the huge range of activities that you're now performing at Eden Park. So, we all know that you might have cricket on Saturday and the Blues game on the Sunday and conceivably a concert or other activities in between. How important is that sort of keeping abreast of that sort of technology, given the challenges and the opportunities that exist on world-class stadiums like Eden Park now, where you can host a number of events within a short space of time, but where obviously the condition of the surface is absolutely crucial to that kind of high-quality sports offering?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Watson. There's no question, without the council's investment in our new surface, we would not have been able to deliver the event calendar that we have over the last 12 months. But then moving forward into the next 3 years, the frequency of events would have been compromised. So again, just want to reiterate our thanks on behalf of the Eden Park Trust to Auckland Council for that support. That surface, it's our #1 asset, and the equipment, the HG Hero Hybrid Edition, is something that we have seen the performance over the last 12 months, that we've had cricket fixtures, that we've had extensive rain and been able to still host a limited overs fixture. Again, with the previous field and the life of 17 plus years, we wouldn't have been able to do so. So that exposure on broadcast, or even for the fans in the stadium that stood and stayed around, wouldn't have been able to experience. That infrastructure that we purchased is purpose built infrastructure for hybrid fields, and it is something that we think that we can offer some support at other venues, whether it be in the local area or across the Auckland Council network. That machinery is state-of-the-art and could also manage other fields with that technology. So we are looking at what other options that we can do. We've got a very skilled team, and to ensure that we can retain them and develop them, we need to explore these types of opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll put an order in for North Harbour Stadium, Nick. So let us know what you can do with that. Thanks.
Here.
We'd be delighted to do that.
Right. Next question, Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And to the whole of the Eden Park team, may I just say thank you for the success you've delivered on the council's confidence in you and the investment that we've made in you. It's been terrific to hear this presentation today. But my question is particularly for Nick. And Nick, if we didn't have COVID right now, so take COVID out of the equation, what are the biggest challenges in an operational sense looking forward so that you can continue to deliver this success?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Fletcher. I look at it in two streams. One is the retention of talent and it's a very competitive market now in terms of, and it is a narrow skill set. So to be able to retain our talent is something that we're always looking at ways in which we can continue to develop our staff and motivate them. In relation to the asset, I mentioned earlier, asset management for any stadium is the #1 priority. So looking at CapEx, ensuring that we can keep up with trends across the globe, the fan experience and the customer experience. There's expectations, and so again, the council's contribution towards our super screen. We've seen Graham Norton live streaming his show on Eden Park super screen with a local winery. So the diversity of content and utilisation then links into that, keeping the venue state of the art and having the ability to innovate. So I would say just our people are critical. Secondly, the investment in the asset. And thirdly, that ongoing innovation to sweat the asset and utilise it for not only commercial purposes, but also for community activations.
Thank you for that answer. And may I say, seeing that photograph of your little girls growing up, it was quite a shock to me that they're no longer babies.
Yes, very proud dad of 2 young Kiwi girls.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Darby, next question.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Nick and Brett and Vicky. Hey, could we just, what is Polestar? Because I think that rating was not about, everything about a stadium. It was about patronage at a particular point in time. When I understand all the, many of the American and the European stadiums are all closed, but we had people. I've gone to the Polestar website and I've searched Eden Park and nothing comes up. So can we just have some, expansion on what Polestar and that rating actually means, Nick? That's my first question, Chair.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Darby. So Polestar is the industry benchmark for music in terms of attendance, but also trends in music. So we've got Rolling Stone, you've got Polestar. They put out figures on a 6-monthly basis. I'm happy to share with you, they did a feature story on Auckland and Eden Park resulting from it. And as I say, we were ranked #1 stadium in the world by Polestar in their June figures. They featured within that edition a story on what's next for the venue. Obviously, I think we've just got to take some time and reflect and be proud Kiwis in saying the #1 stadium, the #1 act in the world, 660, topped the Polestar ratings in terms of tickets sold globally. And Brent Eccles and Eccles Entertainment, a local promoter based in Morningside, was the #1 promoter in the world. So to take those 3 titles is something that we're happy to receive and we're happy to promote for our city. And I think in this challenging time when people are locked down now, we need to focus on some of this positivity.
No, that's fair enough. It's the content of music. It's not the sports content, and it was during a period when the North American stadiums were mainly closed down. Hey, just going to content. Other than that, Nick, and content is the king in stadia, and the anchor content at Eden Park continues to be sport. But good on you for exploring the. Diversifying into others. Super Rugby is a major generator of receipts at Eden Park. For 2022, there are 2 Auckland Super Rugby teams domiciled in Auckland, the Blues and the new Moana Pacific team. Moana Pacific, I understand, are going to be domiciled at Mount Smart, not Eden Park. Is that correct? Did they express an interest to go to Eden Park, and what transpired there whereby they went to Mount Smart? And second part, Nick, is have the Blues contracted? Have they inked an agreement with you for 2022? And last part is what New Zealand cricket content do you actually have under contract for the summer of 21-22?
Thanks for the three questions, Councillor Darby. So in relation to Moana Pacifica, we did have discussions with them, limited discussions, I might say, at board level within the Moana Pacifica team with Sir Brian Williams and also when Deloitte was doing the business case around the team, we provided feedback into that. My understanding is Auckland Unlimited has signed an agreement with Moana Pacifica for Mount Smart to be the training facility and also the home facility for, I believe, 8 years or something that Auckland Unlimited will be able to provide you. That doesn't necessarily mean that the big games won't be played at Eden Park. So to put it in a context, in Melbourne, when you had the introduction of a second A-League franchise, the low-drawing games were played at the smaller venue like Mount Smart or in the instance Amy Park, and the high-drawing derby fixtures where you can maximise the yield were played at Etihad Stadium or the equivalent of Eden Park. So over time, we would hope to see those derbies or derbies, depending upon how you pronounce them, to be played at Eden Park and maximise the commercial return. We were confident with our commercial offer. I think I've mentioned this previously, because of our membership and our corporate suite revenue, something that differs from the economic model at other venues in Auckland. The operational cost for hire is underwritten by our membership program. So before a ball is kicked, the hirer's costs are covered in a sports context. So that's a real positive, but obviously there was alternate reasons for Moana Pacifica to choose Mount Smart, and I'm not privy to those. In relation to the comment around the Blues, our relationship with the Blues is through Auckland Rugby. So Auckland Rugby is the contracting party for all rugby content at Eden Park. That being said, we've got a direct relationship with the CEO and the board of the Blues, and we have some representatives from Auckland Rugby on our board, but also on the Blues board. There's ongoing discussions around what content is played at Eden Park. To put it in a context, when you have a crowd of 6,000 for a Rebels fixture secured by Auckland Unlimited, I think this year, we look at that fixture and say, actually, in terms of venue of best fit, it might actually be better played at a smaller facility. So historically, we've played between 7 and 8 fixtures at the park, depending upon the Trans-Tasman fixtures and whether they come to fruition with borders and double vaccination programs will depend upon what the mix of the game. So SANZA hasn't released the fixture for this coming season, but it's likely that they'll be making announcements in the coming weeks. And the final question in relation to cricket, the real challenge is we had a really action-packed start of the year next year with Te Matatini, the Women's Cricket World Cup, and a number of other pieces of content in the mix. Unfortunately now, with borders and uncertainty, a number of those events are now postponed or cancelled. So we're in discussions with now New Zealand Cricket. Our fixtures really depend upon the touring content. So I think originally this summer was due to be Netherlands, Ireland and South Africa. So depending upon whether or not those countries can come in will depend upon then what fixtures are held at the park. But I've said it before, the players and the fans, short form cricket at Eden Park, there's no better atmosphere.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Nick and Brett and Vicky. Yeah, look, a number of comments have been made. I guess my reflection, and I do have a question, but my reflection would be, my heart was in my mouth about whether 660 would come off, but I mean, the proof of the pudding is that Auckland turned out like that, and I think in terms of this year, that concert at that time was a real standout for Auckland. And congratulations to you and the team for delivering it. It certainly settled the argument for me. But in relation to moving forward, I'm interested to understand Eden Park's approach to patronage in relation to people who are unvaccinated. As we move forward, obviously foreshadowing what the Prime Minister has hinted at in relation to vaccine passports. This is a complex issue, and I would imagine that the events sector and people who run big facilities where you're talking about very large crowds must have some views on this and must be giving some thought and reflection as to how that's going to work. So Nick, are you in a position to comment on this? Because this is a confronting issue for many in our community, but I appreciate the need for people to have choice about what they decide to do, but choice comes with consequences. So are you able to comment?
Yes, and thank you for the question, Councillor Newman. In relation to vaccine passports, we were consulted in the process with government, and we have made some public comments to say it's a welcome step to reopen the venue, but also to see events to be held, knowing the downstream effect in terms of employment and economic benefits, but also the escapism and mental health benefits. COVID passports is one step. We've seen, and we're in constant dialogue with both the UK and the US in relation to COVID passports, the practicalities of implementing COVID passports. So the UK have moved away from them. Scotland at mass gatherings are doing spot checks, and Australia has said by the end of the year they're unlikely to then require COVID passports. So we see it as a transitional phase. We've just been encouraging everyone, and we're doing everything within our powers to say, don't let events be a distant memory. Get vaccinated, contribute to your community, help your fun. COVID passports, yes, we're awaiting an announcement from the government, and then that will assist us with the formation of our policy for both full-time and casual employees, but also contractors coming to site, and shape that positioning. But like any employer, you need to ensure that you're providing a safe workplace.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I have a question for staff from Councillor Walker, but before I do that, are there any more questions for Eden Park first, before I go to staff and then comments? No? Okay. Councillor Walker, you have a question for council staff.
Sure. I'm not sure who, but it goes like this. We've got this operational partnering proposal that's underway. There really has been very little information publicly available around that. We've had a couple of workshops. The questions I've got, and they follow on from some of the questions that I asked Nick Sortner, who referred to the number one issue for any stadiums is the CapEx plan. And my question is around what information we're going to receive around the CapEx plans for the Auckland stadiums, and also what the operational differences and performances that go to benchmarking with stadiums like Eden Park and other stadiums. That those questions are also informed by the comments that Nick Sortner made in his presentation around climate change, where I would suggest there's a very close correlation between capital spend and stadiums as a carbon emitting asset, if you like. So I've got some questions there. Obviously, there are other questions around differences in the model as it goes to corporate suites and membership that are clear. How is it possible to actually receive some of this information, Madam Chair? And I'm happy to take a number of questions and comments offline to officers around that, if that works better.
I think it does, Councillor. This item, of course, is about the last, results for Eden Park, and what your questions are really relating to the stadium strategy. So I would just suggest that you do an email, and we'll get those followed up for you. All right, put your questions in email. Thank you. I'll go now to comments, and I'll start with Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My comment will be a fairly brief one. I just want to thank the Eden Park Trust members again for the excellent presentation today. I think in terms of our investment via the grant to them, we're seeing some outstanding results across the board. And I think the thing that continues to impress me about the performance of Eden Park and aided by our financial support is the breadth of activities and codes in parts of the community that they are now serving, from our traditional sports of cricket and rugby, but increasingly towards different sorts of community types of groups and events that are being put on, and I think not least of which is that growing recognition, not just within Auckland, but internationally, as to the iconic nature of Eden Park that was well and truly reflected in that award, or that recognition as the world's #1 venue by Polestar just during this very year. And I think certainly it provides a stark contrast to what's been happening in other countries. But what I also think it signals, and especially in light of some of these events that are coming up, like the FIFA Women's World Cup, where we're by all accounts targeting 8 fixtures, the Women's Cricket World Cup, and going back years to the Rugby World Cup, to the Men's Cricket World Cup. What a very strong position Eden Park is in, but also Auckland as the city in which Eden Park is based. So all the information I see reported here today, Madam Chair, goes not just to the performance of Eden Park, but I think to the performance of our city for our own communities, but also increasingly internationally in terms of other countries and other codes that recognise that high status that Eden Park occupies. Just finally, Madam Chair, and I think it goes to the potential benefits to our region as a whole beyond just Eden Park as a venue. When I see the commentary in the report today on the turf equipment, on the climate change awareness, I would hope that through the work that's been done in Auckland Unlimited, that kind of benefits, or that knowledge base, if you like, is used then to enhance our other stadiums, Western Springs, North Harbour and Mount Smart in a similar way. I just note in that respect, Madam Chair, that back in 1991 Auckland had a population of 870,000. We're now 1.63 million and growing, and back in 1991 we had the same range of stadiums. So I think it's absolutely imperative that not only do we retain what we've got, but we utilise the expertise that we've seen displayed to us today from the Eden Park Trust members to benefit our whole region and the other 3 key stadiums that serve them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree with you. Members, I've been a bit remiss. I should move and second this. I've had a request from Councillor Fletcher to move, and I'm happy to second.
I have a quick comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, I know, Councillor. I can see that. So it has been moved and seconded. I will now go to Councillor Walker for comment.
Sure. I really just want to follow on from Councillor Watson with accommodations for Eden Park. It's very clear, I would suggest, that the brand of Eden Park, certainly over the last year internationally, has probably lifted significantly, and in most entities, financial entities, there's a very significant financial value attached to that. I don't know what that value is, Madam Chair, but I would suggest compared to any other stadium in Auckland, it's exceptional. I'd just like to give commendations to Eden Park around the lead that they're giving around their climate change analysis, And I would suggest that that serves as somewhat of a benchmark and a template for council to consider for its stadiums and other significant assets. And if we can have some conversation around that, I think that would be useful, because there's urgency around that as it goes to our investment decisions. And the other observation I'd make, Madam Chair, and again it goes to a commendation, is how Eden Park has pivoted, it's turned around, it's been nimble, and from an investment perspective, I'd suggest that any investment and support on Auckland Council's part has been well repaid, even over the last year, and I don't doubt will enhance going forward. So thank you, Eden Park.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I've got no more requests for comment, so I'll just wrap this up by adding my thanks yet again to the Eden Park team, to Vicky as one of the board members, and Nick as Chief Executive, and Brett as the CFO. Look, I want to start by congratulating you on your financial performance. It's outstanding. I also want to acknowledge you on your general performance. I mean, for whatever reason, to be named the best stadium in the world under any circumstances is to be commended. I also want to acknowledge the 660 concert, outstanding with that. Global recognition of Tamaki Makaurau for Auckland and indeed for New Zealand is something that we congratulate you for. I'm going to add another little interesting one. The front page of the New York Times is no mean feat either, and it just really highlighted the fact that you have got that wonderful global recognition. On a more localised, I want to thank you for your ongoing community engagement. I think it's been outstanding, and thank you for the thanks for the local board work there as well. To be named the most accessible stadium in New Zealand is also another point worth giving you acknowledgement for. That's fantastic. So you've thanked council, and I think we want to thank you. So thank you very much. Another comment from Councillor Fletcher. Councillor?
Madam Chair, it was simply to say how pleasant it is to have some really positive news.
Thank you. That was very succinct. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll take it to the vote now. All those in favour say aye.
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 Carried, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Eden Park. Congratulations. Right, now we will go back to item 6, and Brett Catchpole, I believe, is now on the call, and Brett, sorry, I believe that the fact that you weren't on the call wasn't your fault at all. It was the fact that someone didn't tell you we were ready to go. So I will now hand back to you for local board input. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, I hadn't received the notice that your previous meeting had concluded. So my apologies for delaying anything if there's any apologies needed. Look, the Papakura Local Board is appreciative of Eku Panuku's response to the local board's request by agreeing to deliver urban renewal and housing outcomes for the 2632 O'Shaughnessy Street and 36 Coles Crescent under the Eku Panuku support development category. Now, these are items that these properties have been in front of the council previously, but now Panuku has come online with us and are very supportive of our endeavours. The board believes this will actively contribute to the revitalisation of the Papakura Town Centre by making the most of Papakura's metropolitan centre zoning status and deliver high quality development that contributes to the urban regeneration and vibrant and prosperous local economy. The board requests a meaningful consultation approach between the local board and Eku Panuku in relation to these two properties. The board therefore endorses the disposal of 26 to 32 O'Shaughnessy Street and 36 Coles Crescent in Papakura in the context of above. I do need to add that we are concerned about a current claim from the original Davis family, and we want to make sure that that is resolved with Panuku before anything else is finalised. But we are supportive of the sale and endorse Panuku's approach to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions, councillors? Right. Do we want to use Councillor Dalton, Councillor Newman as a vote of thanks?
Yes. Thanks, Brent, for that presentation.
Right. Well, I'll have that that the vote of thanks has been moved by Councillor Dalton, seconded by Councillor Newman. With no questions, any comments? I'll take it to the vote then. All those in favour say aye.
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 Thank you. And thanks, Brent, for presenting. And I acknowledge again that it wasn't your fault that you went on time. However,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Has worked very well, because we'll now go straight to that item, which is item 9 on our agenda. And I invite Marion Webb from Eka Panuku to lead the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good afternoon. So both Anthony Lewis and myself are going to present this paper to you today. I'd like to make a couple of points, please, Madam Chair. The two properties, as we heard from the chair of the Papakura Local Board, are ex-car parks at O'Shaughnessy Street and Coles Crescent that are no longer required for transport purposes by Auckland Transport. Both of the properties are zoned Metropolitan Town Centre under the Unitary Plan. As the chair of the Papakura Local Board has indicated, we've been working quite closely with the Papakura Local Board, the local business association, and a commercial group that has partnered with the Papakura Local Board for some time now to progress these sites through to approval for disposal for urban redevelopment purposes, in line with our support category that will deliver, as the chair says, high quality development outcomes that will contribute to the urban renewal of the Papakura town centre, in line with the board's aspirations. With respect to 36 Coles Crescent, as indicated by the chair of the Papakura Local Board, and you may have been aware of this through the article that was published this morning, that the successor in title of the previous owner at 36 Coles Crescent has raised concerns that the site has been taken without compensation. Our position at Eke Panuku is that the site was vested as part of a wider subdivision approval where no consideration was payable either then or now. However, given the age of the transfer to the then Papakura District Council in the 1950s, we are exercising caution, and I have requested an external review of our position. Early indication from our legal team is that our position is correct and that no compensation is payable, but we are yet to receive that in writing. I'd also like to please emphasise the point that we at Eke Panuku deal with Section 40 and offerback claims quite regularly through our disposals process. And normally the investigation into whether there is a statutory obligation that normally commences when approval to dispose is given by the Finance and Performance Committee, as that is the trigger that a property is no longer required by a council group. However, in this instance, we brought that investigation forward because of the concerns that were raised by the Davis family. Madam Chair, I'll leave it there, and Anthony and I are very happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you, Marion. I have no questions, but I will check. No, with no questions, I'll go to comments now. First comment from Councillor Dalton. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Really just to thank you. It's been a bit of a long process, but thanks to the leadership of the Papakura Local Board and sitting down with Eke Panuku, and for Eke Panuku in particular, Marion, for all of the work you've done, particularly this week with Mr. and Mrs. Davis, appreciate that, and for the CEO, David Rankin, and his interest in Papakura. There's a lot of work to be done out there, and I think it's really encouraging that we can reach a point where disposals are agreeable with everybody and that there is an intention to support the growth and investment into Papakura going forward. So just thank you to all parties.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to move this? And would Councillor Newman like to second?
Yes, thank you.
Happy to.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, it's been moved and seconded, and I think we all endorse what Councillor Dalton has just said. So it's been moved and seconded, and I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We will now go to item 10. And again, we have a support from the local board on this. This is about additional properties for inclusion in Unlock Old Papatoe. And I think I have Richard Davison and Letitia Edwards online.
Yes, you do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Would you like to lead off?
Yes, sure. Thanks, everybody. I'm Richard Davison. I'm the Priority Location Director for Unlock Old Papatoe, and I have my colleague Letitia Edwards here in support of this item. This item follows on from a 2017 high-level project plan process where 7 properties were identified as part of a regeneration program. At the time, these properties were not included in that. For 2 of them, they were as part of Auckland transport process, and the other 2 were not identified for regeneration. Since then, we've done a master plan and we've worked with the community, and we've had 2 properties of those transferred from Auckland Transport to us. That's 15 Colmar Road and 98 St George Street. And we've also determined that 12Z Rollis Road and part of 27 St George Street, which is part of a reserve, also form part of our need for the regeneration program. Since then, we also have shared with the community our proposed master plan, which has been well received. And we have now confirmed that these properties are necessary as part of our regeneration plan. I would like to note through the chair that the local board are strongly in support of the master plan, and note that of that, 2 properties require a condition of investigating a long aspired to intersection, which affects items 1 and 2 of recommendation A. The other 2 we are supported, as overall the master plan proposes extra open space, even though in this case a piece of open space is being proposed for disposal. Thank you very much, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will invite Councillor Filipaina to move and invite Councillor Collins to second. Are you both happy with that?
Aye, Chair.
Yep.
Oh, great. All right, thank you. And then invite questions. Any questions from any councillors? Any comments from any councillor? No questions or comments, so I will then I then put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
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 I'll make that carried unanimously. I've had a request to break for lunch now, so I will. It's 12:33 and we will come back at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Team, we are now back. It's 1 o'clock, so we will reconvene the Finance and Performance meeting. Sandra has asked that we take the roll after lunch, so I will invite her to do that. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mayor Goff.
Present and correct.
Councillor Cashmore.
I'm here, so I try to do two things at once. Ciao.
Councillor Bartley.
Over as well.
Present.
So,
IMSB member Blair. Councillor Casey.
Kia ora, Sandra.
Councillor Collins.
Kia ora.
Councillor Coombe.
Kia ora, no.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Dalton.
Present.
Councillor Darby. Councillor Filipina.
Kia ora.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Hello.
Councillor Hills. Councillor Mulholland.
Present.
Councillor Newman. Councillor Sayers. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Sorry, here, Madam Chair. Linda Cooper.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, and Councillor Sayers just didn't click the button fast enough, Sandra. Thank you.
You. Councillor Walker. Councillor Watson.
Good afternoon.
IMSB Chair Taipari.
Kia ora.
And Councillor Young.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Sandra. Right, members, we now go to item 11 in our agenda, which is a taxation response to the government's bill that they wish to put in. I've added a chair's recommendation that states the fact that if this bill goes through and our submission is not successful, it adds about 33 million, at least actually, about 33 million to our tax bill. So I just want you to draw attention to that resolution that you can read while I invite Barry Davis, who is our team leader in taxation, to present, along with Francis, our our group financial controller, and I've also got John Bishop on the line as well. So Barry, over to you. Thank you.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, it's Francis Katona. I'll be doing the presentation. Sorry.
Sorry, Francis.
No problems. Sorry, I had some problems connecting this morning, so that's why there's some confusion. So just, councillors, the purpose is really to seek a delegated authority to the Chair and Deputy Chair of the Finance and Performance Committee and the group's Chief Financial Officer to approve Auckland Council's submission on the taxation annual rates for 2021-22 GST and Remedial Matters Bill 2021. The bill aims to set the rates for income tax for this year and improving current tax settings, administration, GST regimes, KiwiSaver and social policy rules administered by the IRD. The Auckland Council, my tax team and PwC have significant concerns about the impacts of the proposed amendments on the Auckland Council Consolidated Group, particularly two aspects, namely that the intention to treat interest received from Watercare's Treasury funding as taxable to Auckland Council with no deduction offset for the interest paid by Auckland Council on those underlying borrowings. And as we noted in the paper, last year that represented 88 million, and that means an additional 25 million in tax. And secondly, to disallow charitable donations credit, and last year we claimed 29 million, representing 8 million. That comes to the 33 million that the chair has added to the recommendation. The submission on the bill is being prepared with the assistance of PwC, and a current draft is attached to this paper. The deadline for submissions is the 9th of November. Given the additional tax impacts of the bill and the significant consequential impacts for rates, which we've outlined in the body of this report, we are seeking to make you aware of this, and that's why we're seeking the delegation, because the submission timeframes and the technical nature of the amendments are quite complex. So I'd also draw you to the attention to the risks and mitigations noted in paragraph 21 and 22 if we don't actually get the submission in on time. Based on that, I'm happy to take the rest of the paper as read and to take your questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Francis. I had a question, but it's been withdrawn. Do I have any other questions?
A question from me, please, Desley.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I was just interested. I mean, this is outrageous, and I've already written a letter to the Minister of Inland Revenue about it. But my question is on the charitable donations credit. $29 million of charitable donations. Can we get some sort of indication of what's involved in that? What donations we've made that we're seeking credits for?
Barry, can I ask you to respond to that?
Yes, the donations we actually make 100-something million in donations to various organisations. These are to charitable entities, so they're registered charitable trusts are the only ones that we make any claim, and not the legislated ones, so not to the museum and not to Motat or anything like that. It's only the non-legislated donations or funding to charitable organisations.
Barry, do you have any examples you could just highlight?
Not specifically offhand, but we could provide them.
Mr. Mayor, are you happy for us to provide that to you?
Yes, look, I don't need it now, but if you could just give us a rundown of what they are, I'm just curious to know, and in terms of further discussions with government, it would be useful to know why, they would not want to, first of all, give us the credits for donations that other people might get credits for, but secondly also to know why, when we're borrowing on behalf of Watercare, we'd pay interest on the fact that they paid the interest on what it was costing us to borrow for them. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, and I don't know why officials in Inland Revenue have come up with it. That would be my second question. Why have they made this sort of change against common sense and against historical practice?
In relation to Watercare, I think it's probably accidental in that their definition of a CCTO. They seem to think Watercare was a CCTO when it's only a CCO, and they are anxious to avoid councils such as ours. There are only 5 of us that have a group situation in New Zealand, and they don't think we should have an advantage, even though the limited companies in New Zealand do have that advantage. Same applies to the donations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Sandra, I'm just reading B. Note that Auckland Council is one of only 5 councils which has a consolidated income tax group made necessary by its structure of council-controlled organisation. And if our submission is not successful, would have at least 33 million added to our tax bill, all councils. Sorry, that's my fault. As you know, I was not really good at this. Okay, I have some other questions. I'll move now to Councillor Cashmore.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Having read the paper, I was just becoming increasingly confused. So, Francis, what has changed to make the government theoretical Treasury people bring this in? Because it's, we have lived in the world for the past 10 years doing the books as is, and this is quite a significant change that would necessitate potentially a 2% rate increase. So what, and do they understand the unintended consequences, or is this just pure theory?
Apparently some other councils have been seeking to claim a deduction for interest payments when there isn't a direct link to them specifically borrowing for that CCO. So, for example, they might loan money to say, let's take Panuku, but they haven't actually specifically borrowed money to loan to Panuku. They just borrowed generally. Whereas we, in our borrowings, we are borrowing money specifically which is used by Watercare to fund their capital program. So it appears to be they're trying to fix a problem which doesn't. We don't do that sort of thing. Clearly, but some other councils apparently are doing something like that, and they're trying to stop that loophole. But unintendedly, they thought that by saying that CCTOs wouldn't be caught by this, they thought that we'd get Watercare through, but clearly Watercare is not a CCTO. So what the solution we're suggesting to them is that they actually specifically exempt Watercare, and then they can keep the rest of the legislation as it is, because it doesn't impact us. We don't play games, if that's a way to explain.
So just the last question, to save all this drama, did we have any, or did Ministry of Finance contact Auckland Council for its view before drafting this?
Barry, can you answer?
No, absolutely not. We talked to them a year ago about other things, and this came totally out of the blue.
Thanks, Barry. That sums it up perfectly, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I should just, I'm happy to move this. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to
second
that.
Beat you to it.
You go, boss. You go, boss.
Your Worship, I'll put you as a seconder then. Thank you. And then I move to a question now from Councillor Casey. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Desley. Just the Income Tax 101 question here. Can you just tell me the difference between a charitable donation and a grant?
Grants can be to any organisation. A charitable donation we treat as solely for a registered charity. They're actually all charitable, but it's just what we claim, and we only claim the very specific registered charity ones, so Land Revenue can't query us.
So then our donation to the City Mission's Homegrown project would be a charitable donation, but our grant to Eden Park would be a grant?
That is correct.
Ah, okay. And like the Mayor, I'm interested, so Barry, I don't know anything about how much money we give away to charitable donations, but would that vary from year to year depending on what we decide as a governing body? Or is there a standard, does anybody get the same year on year?
It's all set by council budgets, and it goes through a very rigorous process of who gets what.
Right, so it's all going through decision making. No, that's fine. I'd be interested to see, just over the last few years, what we have made donations to. That'd be really interesting. I think we deserve some credit for it too, but I'm sure we got some at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker.
Sure, I've just got a question. So the council operates a charitable trust in the form of regional facilities, or what was regional facilities. I'm not sure what the circumstances around the merger. So I don't know how this affects our funding of that entity. I don't know whether the council runs inter-organisation loans, does things by way of grant or donation, and whether or not there are circumstances where we might need to change the treatment of things as it goes to this income tax change. I just wonder if the officers could share any light on that as to how things are run currently.
We are not allowed to claim any interest on loans to CCOs or to our own charities. So we can't claim the donation revenue on any funding of RFA. This is what has upset inland revenue, because some of the councils around the country have inflated their donations by counting in the donations they made to council-controlled organisations. That is absolutely not allowed.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got no further questions, so I'll now open to comments.
Just a brief comment through you, Madam Chair. I'm just in the process of emailing out to all councillors the letter I've written to David Parker, and obviously we'll try and back that up with some one-to-one conversations. But you know, to reduce our budget by 33 million without, in my view, any adequate justification for the both changes recommended is really not good enough. And we'll do everything we can to try and reverse that. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. A comment from Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose I just wanted to follow up from Councillor Cashmore's comments in terms of a lot of the things that have been happening to councils in the last year or so. We've had that with the tinkering with the NPSUD. We weren't told about that. You know, even though Councillor Darby wrote a letter, no response. We weren't told about this. There's so many things lately that we're, you know, we could be fantastic partners with the government, and it erodes trust. We should be doing this together, but what's happening is we're being done to now, so it's very disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I've got no further comments, so my comment will be brief but very strongly felt. I think this is, you know, a real travesty for us. I cannot believe that there was no conversation with us around this before it was put together. I cannot believe that there was no discussion at all. And I cannot believe that, again, the government hasn't understood our financial tax returns and the way we do things, and therefore have not appreciated that this would cost us at least $33 million. And you'll be aware that we are discussing the annual budget, and of course we haven't factored this figure into that as yet. And I'm absolutely strongly of the opinion that our submission needs to be really clear and on time, and followed up, Your Worship, with some conversations that you can have with the Minister around this, because if it is passed in its current form, it has a huge financial detriment to Auckland Council, and we've got to do everything we can to try and prevent that. So those are my closing comments. It has been moved and seconded. I will now put it to the vote on voices. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against? I'd like to record that as being unanimous. Thank you. We now move on to item 12, which is options for insurance arrangements for the Auckland Council, Auckland Council Group. And I will draw your attention to Chair's recommendation D, noting this meets Auckland Council's direction given to our Chief Executive as to the optimisation of insurance arrangements under the balance sheet management objective. So I ask you to just have a look at that while we ask staff to present, and I will open now to Mark Maloney and John to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've also got on the call, along with John and myself, Stephen Kane, our insurance broker from Aon New Zealand, to answer any questions the committee may have. As the Chair has alluded to, this work has arisen from the Chief Executive's performance objectives under balance sheet management and in essence to optimise our insurance arrangements to reflect our size, scale and risk profile. The options had previously been workshopped with this committee back in June, and this committee referred those options to the Audit and Risk Committee, which occurred in August, and now coming back to this committee with a recommendation in the paper effectively to progress to a greater use of a risk-based self-insurance fund through the use of the self-insurance fund. Look, I'll leave my comments there. The advantages and disadvantages of each are summarised in the paper. We'll open it up to any questions that the committee may have or comments the committee may have.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Wonderful. Any comments? I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder, Deputy Chair?
Yes, would love to, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And I suppose my concluding comments will be, look, we've asked the Chief Executive to do this. He's done it. And the delegation around further decisions relating to the setup and operation of the self-insurance fund has been given to Peter Gudsell and our Council's Director of Governance and CCO Partnerships. So speak for myself, really. It's been moved and seconded. I've got no questions. I've had no advice of any comments, so I will put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
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 Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now moving to item 13, support for businesses affected by COVID-19. And I will just ask you to scroll up, Sandra, because there are a number of Chair's recommendations that I will take people through. You can't see them all on one screen, unfortunately. But I think I'll ask for the presentation first by staff, and then I will go through the Chair's recommendations. So I'll hand over to Aaron Matic and Andrew Duncan from our financial policy team. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Businesses in Auckland have been hit pretty hard by the latest lockdowns, and in particular in the hospitality sector and retail. And while there was a pretty strong rebound last time, we've had a longer lockdown. It's not clear when it's going to finish. Businesses are under greater stress and they're facing more uncertainty. They've got impacts on their revenue, major impacts in their retail and hospitality sector, but they still have to pay their wages and their rent. And of course the council charges, but our rates and fees for licences are pretty small scale in the context of the other challenges they're facing. They're getting support from the government through the wages subsidy and the resurgence payment. And the council has already responded, as we did during the last lockdown. We've suspended our debt collection for levels 4 and 3. We've waived and extended our fee charges for, and particularly in the hospitality sector, allowing some fast track applications. We've got our ongoing rate support via payment plans and the waiver of penalties when people are asking for payment plans and complying with those. There's also we're communicating our support, making it easy to see on our web page and through our Auckland what forms of support we provide, and highlighting access to assistance from Auckland, assistance and advice from Auckland Unlimited. And we're communicating this through Heart of the City, an updated web page, and through the business improvement districts. Our report looks at a few options and some additional things we can do. Now, our report considers extending the rates postponement scheme that was available through the emergency budget, the COVID-19 rates postponement scheme. Officers aren't recommending that. We note that rates are paid in most part by the landlords, and they're a small part of business costs, and there was a low uptake last time. We've noted we can't do fee waivers. particularly alcohol fees because of the way the legislation is written. But we are extending street trading licensing periods for a time equal to the lockdown. We're waiving the fees, application fees and street trading rents while we're in level 2 or higher, out to a maximum of 6 months. Obviously, we've got the continuation of the suspension of debt collection. We're remitting penalties where people have gone into payment arrangement with us. So these are the key things that the paper covers, and myself, Aaron and James Hassel from Licensing and Compliance here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm happy to move. Your Worship, do you want a second?
Yep, happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just take you through the Chair's recommendations. The first two are straight from the report, but in my opinion, set the scene. And they are, firstly, note to date, Auckland has been in alert level 4 or 3 for 9 weeks and 2 days. And Crown Treasury estimates a restriction on economic activity in alert level 4 of between 26 and 30%. And in level 3 of 15 to 20%. Recommendation B is also a note straight from the report, and it notes that Council's chief economist estimates Auckland's GDP loss under level 4 to be $85 to $100 million per day and $50 to $70 million per day under alert level 3. Recommendation C is noting that Council's commitment to support business comes from across the group, including Council Finances team, the Council Finance team, our regulatory department, and of course from Auckland Unlimited. Changes to recommendation D is only slight, but it just notes the support being provided to business by Auckland Council within its roles and responsibilities, and then it lists what they are as per the original recommendations. Reason that has been added is because in essence, actually, the help for business really has to come from government. We are pretty limited in what we can do, but we're doing the best we can. Recommendation E, agree to extend the postponement of rates for ratepayers impacted by COVID-19 scheme to cover the rates for the 21-22 financial year using the same criteria and conditions as set out in Council's rates remission and postponement policy, except that the reference in the scheme to the 26th of March 2020 are to be read as 17th of August 21, noting that the applications under the scheme will be required to be made before the 31st of December this year, and rates assessed in the 21-22 year will be able to be postponed until the 30th of June 23 at the latest. Applications will be accepted from ratepayers who owned their property as at 17th of August, which of course was the beginning of this lockdown, or after this date only where the council is satisfied that the ratepayer purchased their property after the 17th of August and has been impacted by the effects of COVID-19 that couldn't have been reasonably foreseen before the purchase was entered into. Recommendation F, request the government amend relevant legislation to provide for automatic variations to on-licence conditions to support outside dining during COVID restrictions and allow councils to extend alcohol licences at no extra cost. Sandra, there's a bracket in there that needs to go. And that's, of course, the liquor stuff as well. It means that. G, request the government significantly enhance its business support package for Auckland, given the extended lockdown. Given the extended lockdown is placing huge pressure on many Auckland businesses and the need to ensure their ongoing viability, acknowledging the fact that the restrictions imposed on Auckland are to stop the spread of COVID-19 to the rest of New Zealand. So those are the full list of recommendations. I will now start with questions, and I want to start just with one myself. Andrew, I want to ask you if you are in support of the Chair's recommendations, and is there anything that we haven't looked at that we could have in our toolkit to assist business?
So officers do support the Chair's recommendations. We can go and implement these. We would recommend that I can't quite see it, but I think in G we change automatic to temporary. Can we do anything else? No, we've had a good think about it. Council's cost impact on businesses is relatively small, and businesses' big challenge is their revenue impacts and their fixed costs. And these are things the government's much better equipped to deal with than Auckland Council. The government will have been impacted by the shutdown, but when businesses rebound after we get into lower alert levels, then the government's revenue will increase. We'll only get a few more people on the buses. We don't get that GST and income tax benefit. So both our cost impact on business is lower, but our ability to have our revenue move with movements in the economy is far different as well, and therefore our ability to assist in these difficult times is more restricted. And so these recommendations focus on what the council is best equipped to do to help business.
Thank you for that. Next question, Councillor Darby.
Oh, look, it would help. Could we just email the full recommendations, because they're a struggle to read because on the Skype screen. Could we just get those out, please? That's my first question.
Yes, a quick answer to that.
Sorry, I'll come back to me later, Chair. There's others that would like to engage with you.
I don't have any other questions, to be honest, Councillor.
Yes, you do. There's a couple there.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting lost.
Councillor Coombe and myself.
Sorry, okay, Councillor Coombe. Sorry, my thing hasn't scrolled up properly. Councillor Coombe, you're first, and I just want to, I'll talk there with my comment, acknowledge that your work in this space. So I'll go Councillor Coombe and then Councillor Cooper.
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou katoa. Coming in from Grey Lynn here. Thought I'd put my camera on to say hello to everybody. It's great to have this bring together a report that summarises and highlights everything that Council is doing to support business. Just my partai is, do we have anyone from Auckland Transport who can also just talk to what's happening from the transport side and what's being looked at in terms of potential promotions, whether it's, say, free PT on Saturdays or getting people into the city centre or town centres, and also promotions that might be around parking, discounts, just that whole package, because I think this report's really good at highlighting that our CCOs are part of our collective approach, but it's just missing the transport part, which of course we all pay for as well. So do we know, can we get any details about that, or have anyone who can respond to it?
Andrew?
We hadn't engaged with Auckland Transport on that issue, but we can certainly ask our colleagues how their plans might integrate with that and get back to you at a later time.
Great, thank you. And Madam Chair, can I just, I guess a query to you that if AT need any support for them to be doing promotions that might help businesses, that we can follow up on that directly? It won't have to go through a formal resolution.
Look, Councillor, thank you. I mean, this is stage one, really. This is our initial support for business. We'll see what the government comes out with on Friday. And yes, there are other parts of council that will potentially assist too. But the paper, the way it was written from staff to us, it just gave me the licence to extend upon what they had been talking about to date, noting that the three parts of council, Finance, Auckland Unlimited and the regulatory team had contributed and inputted to date.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to reserve my right to make a comment too when the time's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coombe. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Probably James may be able to answer this. Just the, which one is it? Sorry, we're looking at G. In terms of, no, it might be, oh goodness, It's the one about the alcohol licensing anyway, that it be automatic. And my understanding is there is a Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act review at the moment, and that would have to be changed to make anything automatic. I mean, this isn't sort of run by council, it's the licensing authority. But James, have you got any comments around that? Because we're talking about making it free for one, if it happens automatically, but under the Act at the moment, you actually have to assess a site when you increase it. So there would be a cost to us, wouldn't there? It says in the financial implications there's no cost, but we would actually have to have staff assessing this and the commissioners having hearings on it.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Just a couple of things there. The report is talking about the licence under our trading and offensive public places bylaw, and there's a little bit of staff time involved in changing the footprint of the outdoor dining areas just for food. But you're right, and the report doesn't go into this in terms of the alcohol licensing. There could be a whole range of different costs. I'd suggested rather than automatic, we change the wording in F to temporary changes to licenses. But whatever we do in that space, it will need to come from government in the first instance because a legislative change will be required.
Thank you, James. Madam Chair, could we change that to temporary? Because, you know, we're also committed to alcohol harm reduction, and just being able to willy-nilly extend and leave it with no assessment wouldn't be, it would kind of be a bit contrary. We need to have a bit of a balance around that, and absolutely understanding this is a really good package to help businesses at the moment, but all of the other resolutions are time limited. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And look, it has been changed. And look, these were being worked on right until just before 10 this morning. So
thank you.
Temporary was a suggestion made by James's team, and I'm sorry that wasn't implemented. So thank you. Councillor Walker.
I've got a question around G, which I thoroughly endorse, which is essentially an advocacy position that we take to government. My question is around the information that's necessary to support that, and it goes to our awareness of how businesses are struggling. Quite obviously, we've got a direct relationship with the owners of properties, who are the people that pay the rates. Of course, we know that in many instances businesses have the rates passed on to them. So what intelligence are we getting? What surveys are we conducting, either on the part of Auckland Unlimited or other parts of council, around the pressures and the financial situation that our businesses in Auckland are in? What do we know that might enable us, and in particular know better, to really reinforce G? So that's a question, Madam Chair.
It is a question. Andrew or Aaron, in your discussions with the AU?
We have talked about the impact on Auckland businesses with AU. Aaron, do we have any specific survey information or further detail from them?
I know that they have, this is something that they have been keeping an eye on. I don't have specifics on what they do have, and it might be something that we get them to follow up with. So I can't answer that specifically.
So we could work with them on a communication to government in response to the direction of the committee in regard to G, to ensure that any information that they did have formed the support for that communicating G to government, and indeed F.
All right, Councillor?
Yes, I just make the observation that we run all sorts of engagement events. We call them Have Your Say. if ever there was a time for businesses to have their say and communicate with us, to tell their stories, to inform us so that we can take up a strong position to government, it's now, and this is not going away. We really need to be as informed as we can be so we can take as strong a position as we can. So I would urge the people in council to do that. The other question I've got really follows on from the question that Councillor Coombe had around various forms of support, and I put it like this. This issue is so serious that there is a need for this council to have a full-on campaign across Auckland. And this is not just a short-term campaign, it's short-term and medium-term, that's innovative, that picks up on the sorts of things, for example, that Eden Park told us it was doing. Innovative, nimble, imaginative, visionary, stuff that can get people into the businesses in Auckland that need it. And my question is, what sort of a campaign have we got? I don't know at this point. I have not seen a lot other than what appear to be siloed approaches that parts of council are taking. Thank you. So I have a question there.
Andrew, I don't know whether you want to answer that, but it's not really your department, but I know that we have had a Shop Local campaign. Andrew, is anything... it's a very good question, but actually it's not in scope of what we're doing right now. But I think we all join your concern around some sort of campaign for business once they are able to get up and operating. So has anyone got any input?
My reason for asking this, Madam Chair, is that campaigns require recognition, they require funding, they require planning, and I'm just asking what we're actually doing. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the Financial Policy Department tries not to do too much visionary stuff. We, however...
Is that an understatement?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
However, this is a key area of activity for Auckland Unlimited. Certainly we're coming to you with a workshop next week that has some link to Auckland Unlimited's proposed activities for next year. That could be, while that's on the accommodation provider targeted rate, it might be an opportunity to ask them about this particular issue as well, what they're doing in that space, as you'll have them with you in that session.
Yeah, I think this is a finance meeting, so these are financial resolutions, for want of a better word. I would request that the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Dalton bring this up with their work programme within the CCO Oversight Committee as a result of further work in this area, and including that of Auckland Transport, as was mentioned earlier. Deputy Mayor, are you happy to do that?
Yeah, it's already started, Madam Chair. It's with working extensively with Nick and Pam and the team around what can be done, bearing in mind that our resources and abilities to actually deliver are not the same as that of the Crown.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Thank you. Councillor Darby, sorry, I lost the thing. Councillor Darby, question from you.
Sorry, Chair, it took me a while to find things there. Look, I appreciate this paper, and this is a good focus. I guess my question is in an area just outside of this paper, and so bear with me, Chair. This paper is limited to the support of business, and business is really good at presenting its case because it's coordinated. It's got lots of people who know how to go to the right places to get attention, and they've got our attention, and that's good and deserving. I'm cognizant of a lot of other Aucklanders who aren't being referred to here, and I'm thinking of Aucklanders even maybe more desperate than business, and that's hard to believe, isn't it? But Aucklanders in the lower socioeconomic demographic, those that are making, for the first time, phenomenal demand on food banks, The stress of our frontline health workers, like never before seen, police included, as well in that area, and our young people who are really socially stressed. They're not at school, they're dropping out of school, online dropping out of school, pressures like that. So I know it's not related to this particular paper, but I actually think we need to the council needs to look at many other areas where there are phenomenal stresses that are equal to and much greater than just business. So look, I know, Chair, it's not the subject of this paper, but I would hope that somewhere in our organisation we are looking to be advocating and taking action for those other desperate parts of Auckland. Can I just maybe go to, I guess the key officer is our Chief Financial Officer or somebody that might just give us a pointer as to how we might embark on unpacking all those challenges as well and bring them to the table.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Darby. We've focused here on what we believe we've got the ability and the funding and the role to achieve. So under E, we've got the postponement of rates for all ratepayers. But you're right, that doesn't go to a number of the other impacted communities, and our role in that is, as you've indicated, more around advocacy. G is really around that business support package rather than going wider than that at this stage, and that advocacy role is where that would be. A wider paper is, or a wider remit is really a discussion around services that council takes on board and wishes to fund. So quite a big conversation, that one, I believe. Obviously a valid one given the impact that has been felt across the community and not necessarily uniformly.
Look, thanks, Chief Financial Officer, and thanks, Chair, for just giving me a bit of room to discuss this. But look, not for discussion here now, but I think it is something we need to have some discussion on, wider discussion on. But I will hear from my colleagues on that as we discuss this paper, and maybe others are interested in a much broader understanding of the terrific, the phenomenal impacts that this COVID is having on individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And look, when these, as you will be aware, staff put this paper together initially, and when these extra recommendations, when this was being looked at, it absolutely came to everyone's attention that actually this needed to be a wider focus. And there has been some conversations already across the council family about how to do that. I've just seen Councillor Fletcher say, could Finance recommend to governing body the need to give further consideration to the impacts of COVID on Auckland? I mean, I'd be happy to include that. I think there does need to be a bit of a reset. I mean, we're doing it as far as budgets go, but as you say, it's more than budgets, isn't it? It's about the social impacts and other impacts, of course, for all Aucklanders. So, Your Worship, with your indulgence, I'd be happy to accept a H that we recommend to a recommendation to the governing body the need to give further consideration to the impacts on COVID on all Aucklanders. Is that what you mean, Councillor Fletcher?
That's good. That covers it.
Yes, Madam Chair. It's on people. It's on Aucklanders collectively. Yeah. Not just Auckland as a physical place. So thank you. If you can accept that as an H, I would be very grateful.
Yeah. On all Aucklanders. On all Aucklanders. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Darby. Councillor Dalton, question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you for these recommendations. I'm assuming there's going to be some comms on this. I think it's really important to get out to all businesses through all of Auckland these recommendations. So it states what as a council, what levers we do have as a council and across our CCOs. and importantly, our advocacy of the role of government in being able to respond to Auckland businesses. And so that we use every tool that we have. Auckland Unlimited have done a good job in their comms, I believe. But from council and perhaps you as chair in this particular item, to get that out through the business associations, so we're really hitting those businesses that it impacts outside of the city centre, and that we are inclusive of all of Auckland when we get the comms out, all of these recommendations out, the support that's available. And as councillors have got in behind vaccination programs, that we get in behind what Councillor Walker is suggesting. It requires a campaign of a sort, that we are seen to be supporting our businesses that are suffering, that haven't had as much as they could have perhaps got from government this far. And we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination as yet. So I'd like to have some thought put into what that looks like outside of communicating this particular item throughout Auckland, but also into a campaign to get in behind our businesses as best we can as an organisation.
Yes.
My question there was, is there going to be comms on it? Thank you.
Isabel, are you on this? You are on this call. Would you like to?
I am here. Short answer is yes. So currently we're communicating to Aucklanders by letting them know what support the council does provide. So we've made that accessible via our website and our Auckland. In terms of a campaign going forward to support local businesses, that is something that would need to be run by Auckland Unlimited.
Yeah, I think also Councillor Dalton was referring that the comms message of our decisions today to business improvement districts as well, and we can do that.
We sure can.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dalton. Any more questions? No, I'll move now to comments. And the first comment I will give to His Worship the Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Desley. And it partly relates to what Angela Dalton's just said now. I sent out to some of the central business groupings the efforts that we're making in terms of advocating to government. It occurred to me, listening to you, I should have sent that out to the bids as well. And we need to do that. Just in regard to the recommendations, the chair and Councillor Coombe and I worked together to try to work out the best way to phrase recommendation G, because I think it really is important to highlight the justification for greater help for Auckland. It's not just Auckland with its hand out. It's Auckland because we carry the burden for the country, one of having the quarantine facilities in our city, and secondly, the restrictions on the city now are designed to protect the rest of the country from COVID spreading from Auckland elsewhere. And some of you will have seen that we hit 102 cases today, of which 94 were in Auckland. So the sacrifice is being made by Auckland for the rest of the country to protect it. And the PM and others around the country have acknowledged that, but that is the justification for more assistance being given to the businesses that are finding it really tough going at the moment. Now, we are getting currently the bulk of the wage subsidy and the resurgence support payments, and that's in excess already of $2 billion that have come to Auckland for that. But those two things on their own, I don't think are sufficient, and I've been raising that at all levels of government, from the Prime Minister to the Minister of Finance and our liaison minister Verrill and other ministers. And I've raised it with them on a number of occasions, and I've got emails and texts, etc., demonstrating that, we are at a situation where the longer this lockdown goes on, the more likely it is that businesses that would otherwise be viable will fall over. And the outcome of that has been the announcement by the Minister, which he indicated to me last Sunday, that he'd be making about a package tomorrow. Now, the other the other lobbying that we've been doing is working with Auckland Unlimited, which is coordinating some of the key business groups. And again, doesn't involve the bids, and perhaps we should have focused on that. But the Auckland Business Chamber, the Employers and Manufacturers Association, Heart of the City, Hospitality New Zealand, Restaurant Association, Retail New Zealand, and Tourism and Māori and Pacifica groups. And the latest that I have from Nick on that is that following their meetings last week with Minister Nash and their conversations with Minister Robertson, there are positive signs that the announcement at 10 o'clock tomorrow will include a number of the things that the businesses have been asking for. Now, I don't know the detail of that, and if I did, I wouldn't be able to tell you in advance of the announcement, obviously. So it's not that we haven't been speaking up for Auckland. We have been. It's just the manner in which we're doing it. It hasn't been designed to stand on a soapbox and use a megaphone. It's designed to go straight to government and say, hey, these are businesses that really need help. And nobody envisaged at the start of this process that 11 weeks on, we would still be under restriction. So I'm hoping that the announcement on Friday in a range of different ways will be helpful. But of course, from the viewpoint of the hospitality, until we get out of this point of level 3, it doesn't make much difference. But part of the announcement tomorrow will indicate the government incentives for businesses coming out of these restrictions, particularly with respect to those who are vaccinated. So I think there'll be some interesting things in the announcement tomorrow, and we're all waiting to see what's going to be said. So I just want to acknowledge Auckland Unlimited, that's been working pretty hard, and you've been getting the weekly reports, which we also forward to government so that they're fully aware of the feedback of how this is hurting Auckland on the ground. We know they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because it has to be done, but that doesn't make the pain less for those businesses that have been victim to being unable to open in many cases. And it's not just the hospitality industry; it's a whole wide range of retail industries and groups like hairdressers and barbers, etc. So I'm hoping this package will be a step in the right direction, and to the extent that it does help those businesses, we'll applaud it. We'll probably also make the comment that, if this goes on much longer, there'll also need to be more. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And one of the reasons my video is conveniently not working is I could have had 12 chickens in my hair at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to hairdressers being operational. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do want to acknowledge your efforts, Mr Mayor, in communicating with the government, and you haven't made it into anything about you. You've actually worked for Auckland on this, so I really appreciate it. I guess my main comments here are, if you look at it today, it was actually 104 cases today. At the moment, there's 891 active cases in our community, bar half a dozen around the rest of the country. We've got a rolling average of 65 a day, and that really adds up. So for me, this is not going to go away anytime soon. And I've been, even if we get a package tomorrow for businesses, the council has been whacked over and over. Give with one hand, take with the other. One, this taxation issue, the NPSUD, which will require a huge amount of work, as well as the infrastructure we have to provide for extra buildings. The fast track consenting legislation that allows for massive development on places that were never meant for that intensity, hence requiring more infrastructure. All of these changes that are being rushed through government at the moment are going to really affect our ability to help anybody. So I applaud what we can do here. It's not a lot, but we are not in the position to be able to help everybody as much as we'd love to. I mean, that's why we're all in service here. We want to help, but the reality is every time we do something, the money's got to come from somewhere. And I acknowledge it's not going to affect the budgets too much, but there's always going to be that lead lag time where we're receiving that cash flow. So I want to thank our regulatory staff, James, Craig Hobbs and Mervyn, probably for working on this, and our finance team. I don't believe you work in silos. So I was a bit upset to hear that comment by one of the councillors, which was inappropriate. I see our staff trying to work together to do the best they can with the limited resources they've got. So I really I'm very pleased that we can do this. But I think we're in this for a long haul, and I do hope that if we get something, or businesses get something tomorrow, that's great, and that we get some relief from some of the other imposts that are being put onto us by government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coombe.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to speak in support of what's before us and start just by acknowledging the real devastating impact of the pandemic on, and it is acknowledged that it's on the business community, but also the communities of Auckland in many different ways, and our vulnerable communities who are bearing the brunt of the restrictions. I do welcome that this paper is focusing on what we as council can do for businesses and what we need to advocate to government to strengthen their support for our businesses, especially as restrictions continue, because we've all heard stories of just how unsustainable it is, and that businesses that survived from the lockdown last year are really in a precarious position this year, because it's very, very different kind of lockdown, and as we know, there's sustained levels of uncertainty. So this today, I do look forward to us having that conversation about what other support we can provide for other communities that are bearing the brunt of lockdown. But today, this is about what we can do for our businesses. And I did just want to focus in particular on F and how we need to advocate to government to make changes around the alcohol licensing requirements, because as we know, we've seen a lot of flexibility from staff and attempts to really help the hospo sector around what we can do with street trading licenses, with supporting opening up into street space, anticipating what might happen under level 2, and when businesses are going to want to open up, use outside space. But we've got to a point where we can't go any further without legislative change and without support from government. So thank you, Madam Chair and Mayor, for including F in these recommendations. It's something that particular Councillor Hills and I have been keen to see in there, because it means that we can have the whole package of hospo being able to do alfresco dining over summer, when it's going to be still a very dynamic environment, probably a difficult environment, but at least we can do in Auckland streets what we've seen happening all over the world in the Northern Hemisphere summer, and now in Australia and Sydney, where they're having alfresco dining experiences, which is just taking what was happening inside in businesses that have the required licenses, that have gone through all of the checks, are just taking that to outside. And we don't know how it's going to work, but we've at least got to give hospo that chance. And so I'm really pleased that we're going to be advocating that to government to make that change, so that we have that flexibility. And of course, the Mayor's spoken about the fact that businesses need this enhanced business support package, and we have high expectations of what comes through tomorrow. And we've heard that. I've got 6 bids in the Waitemata local board area. If I claim 2 of your bids, Councillor Simpson, that are strictly in your ward, but they're all saying the same thing, that they've really got high expectations of what needs to come from government tomorrow. So just want to thank staff for the response to the call that went out to please bring together everything that we're doing to support business into one place, what's going on on the website, and how we've got to improve those comms. That's been really appreciative, and also just how all the different parts of council are working together with the CCOs to try and be as innovative as possible and nimble to say, look, you know, this is a whole new age of the pandemic, and we've just got to be able to operate really nimbly and flexibly, because we just couldn't anticipate that we'd be in this situation we are in at the moment. And as we go into summer, we really want to be able to just be able to provide all the support that we possibly can. So I think these resolutions, I hope they'll be warmly welcomed by the business community who've been wanting to hear from us exactly what we are able to do and what we can support them with, and also what we can advocate to government for. So thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Mayor, for putting these forward. Really appreciative, and thank you to the team who've worked on this package. Really appreciate it. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and thank you to you and your worship as well for the excellent work in the offices. And I just wanted to reiterate the comments that have been made, and also point out the work that businesses are doing as part of the vaccinations. Look, the business community has not only warned the commercial impact of the lockdown, which has dragged on for months and months and months, and the aggregated numbers around the economic impact are pretty horrifying. But, Chair, it is the personal stories of those businesses that are affected. It is very raw, it's very personal, it's very visceral, and it is difficult. It is difficult to, you know, to harden your heart to the stories that are out there. And I think that the council actually has demonstrated, in my view, the council has demonstrated the very best of a public service response to a pretty horrible, well, it's an appalling situation that has happened and continues to happen. It seems like it's going to go on for a long time to come. My request to His Worship, Phil, look, when you do reflect back to government on the economic impact of what has happened in Auckland, can you please make the point or reinforce the point that actually not only is the business community suffering, but Auckland's business community has helped to stand up many of the most successful vaccination events through the sponsorship that the businesses have given, which has enabled incentives. It's not all about incentives, but they have been crucial, and they're becoming more crucial at getting the hardest and most hesitant over the line. And that may make the difference to get all of the region over the line, and that is significantly due to the generous giving of those business owners who have little or nothing else to give. So I make that point because I think it is important to know. I think it's important for Wellington to understand that, because I don't think they do. But you know, we are moving forward on vaccinations not only because we have to, but because it is a partnership, and Auckland's business community has a major role to play in that partnership, both now and as we move forward the next few weeks, as we mop up the last few who are yet to vaccinate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the extra work you put into these motions to strengthen and embody them slightly greater. I want to support the Mayor's comments, but also those of Councillor Newman and Councillor Darby. This pandemic has reached right across all of Auckland. We have been the gateway city. We're the city with the MIQs in large numbers inside our town, and Delta is a whole new COVID variant that's spreading like wildfire. Whether it can be contained, I'm not an expert or not. But the hit has been enormous. So at level 4, the GDP loss to Auckland is 100 million a day, and at level 3, it's 50 million a day. The average business since COVID has been around with the combined lockdowns has cost that average business $675,000. Most businesses can't afford that sort of whack. These are the small and medium enterprises that employ people, create an embodied economy in an urban area. The businesses, together with the Employment and Manufacturers Association and the Auckland Business Chamber, have approached and written to Stuart Nash and the Minister of Finance asking for additional assistance over a number of areas. So actions to provide certainty around the framework for enabling businesses to open and operate safely with the domestic open date target of December 1. Direct financial support utilising existing funding mechanisms. Support for Auckland businesses through a regional business partner program funded $35 million from the government, and activation programs of $10 million to support local businesses, and a series of quick wins to get things moving, including alcohol regulations, fresco dining, and so forth. There is not one simple answer, Madam Chair, to any of the problems and questions that have been put, and the government's got a rock at a hard place. But Auckland has paid the price to help protect the rest of the country, and this is our Christchurch earthquake moment. We need greater assistance to get our economy back going. We need to have certainty, we need to open up as fast as we can, and we need to get those bubbles going across the Tasman again. If Auckland's 35% of the GDP of this nation, we can't afford to have one part of that big economy locked down in perpetuity. It's just not sustainable, and it needs to move forward. I really look forward to Minister Robinson's announcements tomorrow. I hope they're going to be answering some of the questions that Auckland businesses have put to the ministers this past week, and that we get some responses. I'd really like to acknowledge Nick Hill and the team at Auckland Unlimited for the work they've done in coordinating, advising and putting data to these requests to the government. It's well founded, it's well resourced, and it needs now to be actually actioned upon. Certainty is going to be key for these businesses going forward, and for the employers, employees, employers, and indeed for council. We cannot any longer continue to live in a fortress Auckland and in a vacuum of uncertainty. We must move forward. And I thank the Mayor for his leadership, and I also thank all the agencies for putting their hand up, working with Nick Hill and the team at Auckland Unlimited, but particularly to the businesses themselves who have stood up and said, we need assistance, this cannot go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very, very well, as others, that was a very good comment, as others have given. My next comment comes from the Deputy Chair, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to first, of course, add my voice to the chorus, acknowledging the sacrifices that businesses have made. And obviously, particularly for smaller businesses, people go into these ventures with hopes and dreams. They've got families at home, they've got employees to pay, and this must be absolutely horrible to them, obviously financially, but also mentally. So we've got some serious challenges going forward, and obviously we try and bring as much business back up on their feet as we sort of enter into the new world, I guess. And I want to acknowledge this resolution and the staff and politicians that have worked on this. It's absolutely fantastic. I want to particularly also say Councillor Coombe and Councillor Hill's working really hard on the outdoor dining stuff. And actually, I think it's a good example of we can come out of this pandemic over time, and it will take a long time, but we can actually rebuild the kind of communities that we want to see. And actually, we might see that outdoor dining practices being more widely taken up is going to be something that will make Auckland a much more exciting place to live going into the decades. But also I want to lastly acknowledge that actually central government have done a lot of work in this area, and I think that needs to be acknowledged and appreciated. Things like the wage subsidy schemes, resurgence payments, the approach of putting public health first in the first place has really helped, obviously, keep businesses and consumers healthy and living in a lot of cases. And so there's been a lot of work done by central government, and I think that should be acknowledged and thanked as well.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I now have Councillor Bartley, and then I have Councillor Fletcher. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say I support the resolutions. I also agree with Councillor Henderson about what the government is doing in this space. I mean, we all knew the priority was trying to save people's lives, and that as a result of that, businesses wouldn't be the priority, and that there would be some economic loss. So it's weighing that up, saving lives, people's lives, or business economy. But it's good to see the support coming in from government for businesses, and good to see these resolutions. I say that because I am still delivering food parcels, and I know that it isn't just certain groups that everybody thinks that is suffering. It's wide ranging. So many people from different backgrounds are struggling. So whatever we can do to help all of Auckland is a good thing, especially in terms of these resolutions with the business community. So that's all I wanted to say. Oh, and also for Auckland Unlimited to acknowledge their work, but also if I could just promote what Tamaki Regeneration we're doing to support our local businesses in the first lockdown was really successful. So if there's anything that they can offer in terms of the local campaigns that they ran, then I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to appear ungracious by not acknowledging everybody, but I think that's already been done. My interest is in, if we get the opportunity through the governing body to look at this more widely, I still think there's a lot of misunderstanding existing in the public of what services they can and can't access. I had a long chat with somebody yesterday about whether they could go to the chiropractor or not, or whether it had to be an emergency situation, whether they could go to the dentist or not, whether, you know, there's an awful lot of confusion that is out there that is not helping small business as well. So in a common sense, is there rather more that we can do to bring clarity around some of those things? This might be one of those conversations that's better had on a Tuesday morning when we come together to discuss COVID more generally. But right at the moment, we are all vulnerable in Auckland. We know that we're in for the long haul on this, and I think we've got to look at it as comprehensively as we possibly can. And the other thing I'd like to see is, and I sort of am echoing perhaps Councillor Cooper, who I thought made a really valuable contribution, but if ever there was a time that I would really like to see advocacy coming from the Auckland Council to say to both the Labour Party and the National Party, for goodness sake, can't the parties work together? This is the biggest unravelling of the city, the country that I've seen in my lifetime. I want to see people working together on this. We are all so vulnerable right now, and you've done some excellent work in bringing these recommendations to us, and not before time. You know, I think it's so appropriate that these are coming and the council is trying to respond. But I think we've got to respond also in terms of leadership to say we want the parties, the major political parties, working together on this. I really rate Grant Robertson. I think he's a fantastic individual, and I think he is one of the better ministers, and I would like to feel that he and Andrew Bailey can just sit down and find a way through this. You might feel that my comments are being far too political now. I don't care. It's something I feel passionately about. This is so hard on people. We don't know. We haven't had the briefings yet on the capabilities within our hospital system. We know the numbers of the projections that we've seen, but there's an awful lot of work that we need to do, and I hope if the matter comes to the governing body that we can give some comfort and some assurances, even if it's just down to helping people in really practical ways by forgoing some car parking or whatever it might be. I don't know, but I would really like to feel that if this is to be advocacy from the Mayor directly rather than from the council as such, that some reference point can be made to the Mayor, and also speaking to the Leader of the Opposition and saying this has to be a time when you're working together with the Prime Minister. So I realise time's up, so I'll leave it there. But I look forward to the work that we can put together for the governing body, and I thank you and all of the officers for bringing this paper together for Finance Today.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I've got no other councillors who want to make a comment. So in conclusion, I want to say just a couple of points. First of all, COVID, whilst it is has initially had a health focus, it's the trouble it's caused has not just been to people's health, but it's been to their livelihoods and to their businesses and to their incomes. The purpose of today, however, is, and the name of the paper, is support for businesses. And I think that if business doesn't do well, Auckland doesn't do well. And there is no doubt in my mind that they are struggling at the moment. Some of you may have read an opinion piece I wrote for the Herald the other day, where I talked about the positive work that we'd done as a council, but also of the importance of business and the fact that we do have to do, that their success is our success, and we do have to help where we can. I want to acknowledge that the level of economic reduction as a result of business being shut down is huge for Auckland, and I believe that we are all collective in our desire to help where practical. I want to thank our finance staff, I want to thank our regulatory staff, and I want to thank Auckland Unlimited. And I want to thank, as well as those staff in those particular departments and parts of council, I want to thank Councillor Cooper for your work in the regulatory space. I want to thank Councillors Coombe and Hills for their work, and your worship, yours as well. This has been a series of recommendations that I felt very strongly about and wanted to highlight as much as I can to Aucklanders and to business that we are pulling out all stops to do what we can within the limits that we have. But of course, the real big point around this is that the key challenges for business, i.e. the economics of their problem, can't be made by us. They need to be made by government. And I think the plea in the recommendation to government is one of our strongest. They have the toolkit, not us. And for me, I am waiting with bated breath to see what they come up with on Friday. If you just look at the economics around that, you know, if Auckland opens up and, you know, you go and buy the fridge that you haven't been able to buy now, and you go out to dinner twice in a month because, you know, you're trying to help local business, the tax and the GST on that goes to government. It doesn't come to us. So the benefit goes to government as well. So we've just tried to use the tools available to council to help business. I want them to do well. I'm sure you want them to do well. And the fact that the enhancement of these recommendations should hopefully reflect that. And in conclusion, I just want to say that this is step one. I believe council has a wider role to play in helping Auckland business and Aucklanders recover from COVID-19. And I think that discussion will be ongoing for us all. So I have moved these recommendations and they're seconded by the Mayor, and I will now put them to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? I'd like to note that these resolutions have been passed unanimously. Thank you, committee. We now move to item 14, which is the summary of Finance and Performance Committee information memoranda and briefings, including our forward work programme. I'm happy to move. Deputy Chair, are you happy to second?
Yes, of course I am.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I'll take it to the vote then. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Item 15 is consideration of extraordinary business, and there is none. I now would like to close the Finance and Performance meeting today, ending at 2:24. Thank you very much, councillors and your worship. Very productive discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Desley.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Desley.